Hello and welcome to 50 Charts in 50 Minutes. I am, how many of you have come to some of the sessions that Jeff and I have done over the, can you turn the lights down a little bit? I'm kind of blind. A few of you. Okay, so this is our 4th year in a row presenting. The last 2 years we did a tips battle, and it's 1-1, but this year we're not keeping score. I am, but he's not. So for those of you, how many of you are planning on trying to take notes in this session? Okay, don't bother. You won't be able to keep up. It's recorded, so watch that later. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm Andy Kriebel. I'm the head coach of the Information Lab Data School in London, and this is...
I'm Jeff Shaffer. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for a company in Cincinnati, Ohio called Unifund, and adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati.
All right, you ready?
Survey.
All right. Huh?
Tell them about the survey.
Oh, yeah. So we don't have a slide for the survey, but feel free to fill it out now. If you're not going to give a 5, don't fill it out. Okay? Does that sound good?
I think that's good.
Okay.
We're ready to go. All right, so to get started, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with blue and green pills. Right? Do you understand Tableau? Blue and green. A lot of you out there might use the ShowMe for some of these charts. We kind of got together and said we're not going to use the ShowMe for any of this, so we're just going to be dragging and dropping pills. If you're not familiar with Tableau ShowMe, it is not a chart generator like Excel. It doesn't generate charts like Excel. It just moves pills around on the Tableau canvas. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're just going to be moving a bunch of pills around. We're going to do that on an X and Y canvas, columns and rows, and hopefully generate a whole bunch of charts. Some of them are blue, some of them are green. That's discrete and continuous, and that really affects the way that some of the charts go. So if you're expecting to click a lot of ShowMe, here's what Andy and I kind of think of the ShowMe. It's really just a pill pusher. It just moves pills around in the Tableau menu, so we're not going to do that.
We should have made the pill blue and green.
We could have, yeah, blue and green.
Good idea.
All right, so we are going to be doing a lot of double clicking, and Tableau has a smart engine for its double clicking. I call it the Tableau order of double click operations, you know, for those of you who watch the Tableau order of operations. And this is how some of that works. When you double click on a geographic field, you get a map. When you double click on a measure, it goes to places on the Tableau canvas depending on the order in which you click it. So we're going to talk about that as we do some of these. You're going to see us kind of do that to get fast and furious charts. And so on we go. I'm going to take us out of presentation mode. So to start with, I'm just going to build some bar charts. I'm going to use the old coffee chain data. If you've been using Tableau for a while,
it's a good one.
It's a good data set. It's a really good data set. So here we go. We're going to just build some stuff. So I told you we'd be double clicking a lot. I'm going to start with sales. I'm just going to double click sales. And what happens to it? It goes to the rows. I get a bar chart automatically. I think we saw that on Devs on Stage, actually. And then I'm going to go up here to product line and double click product line, and that's going to go to my columns. So now I have the rows and columns with a bar chart, right? Very simple. When I hit the plus sign, because it's hierarchical data, that'll break itself down. I can rotate the chart to get a bar chart. I'm going to kick it in entire view, and we have a regular old bar chart. Simple enough, right? All right, let's do some fun stuff with that bar chart. Let's start adding a target line. I can add an average line to it. I can do it at the pane. This is the average of each individual segment. We'll talk about coffee versus espresso. I can also add the average line against the whole table, so you can see the average of the whole table. What happens if you wanted to see a different target for each one of those, though? And we're starting to get to a bar chart with a target line. So you probably know this from our tip session, but you can drag these reference lines off. Just click them and drag them, and they'll go away. That's a fast tip for you. We're going to go back to our data, and there's a budget. We have an actual and we have a budget. We want to put a budget line on it, so here's budget sales. I'm going to add budget sales to my details. And the reason I do that is because now budget is being used by Tableau in the view. It's not showing anything yet. I'm going to use the same technique I did before with the average line, but this time I'm going to do it with a reference line. Drag that over on the cell, and I'm going to point it to this new field that I added, which is budget sales. If I wouldn't have put it on the details, it wouldn't have shown up in this box, and now I have a bar chart with a target line. Just because of the size of this monitor, I'll make them really thick and really big so you can kind of see them in the back there. All right, what if I wanted to turn that into a bullet chart? So this is one of the fast things you can do with the ShowMe. You can go to ShowMe and make a bullet chart. Well, all that is distribution bands, same thing. I take distribution bands, I bring it over and put it on the cell, and I have distribution bands. To turn it into a bullet, I can set the threshold, 60%, 80%, 70, 90, whatever I want, and down here, there's a fill above and fill below. It'll fill above and fill below those marks, and I have a bullet graph. In something like this, I probably need to take off the reference bands because they're the grid lines. There's like white grid lines on this one. So I'll just format the grid lines out of my columns so that I have a nice looking bullet graph. Easy enough. Couple extra steps, then maybe the ShowMe. But if you were to use the pill pusher, let's go make a bullet chart with the pill pusher. I'm going to go down here and select the same data. I can take the budgeted sales, the actual sales. I'm going to hold down my control key here, and I'll take the product line, and I'll go to my ShowMe and hit bullet graph. And I can kind of do the same thing that I did before. You get the same looking chart. However, there's one problem. If you look down on the x-axis, you'll see that the x-axis is actually budget sales. So my blue bar is actually the budget, and my line, my target line, is actually the actuals. And that happens a lot if you're using the ShowMe. Your pill ends up in the wrong place. Now you can fix that. Just go down to your x-axis, swap your reference line fields. It'll flip the two of them, and you're back to where you should be. So just a quick tip on that one. Be careful of where it puts it. All right, let's do a stacked bar. Moving on, we'll do a stacked bar. Let's do something over time. I'm going to use a complaints data from a complaints dashboard that we have. I'm going to do time as in a date. So there's the date. It says year up there of the time. And I'm going to measure the number of records for the number of complaints. So I'm just going to put that on my rows. I'm going to take that time out. Now, instead of hitting the plus, all dates have a plus sign in there and the hierarchy's built out. Watch what happens when I double-click date again. Date will go in there again on quarter, and date will go in there a third time. So there's another fast way to get your hierarchy up there. You can use your dates like that. And I'm just going to make it year and month. And I have this status here. I think it's called closed or type description, one of these two. I'll put type description up here. It's definitely not that. And closed, I think it is. There we go. Don't make the first stack bar chart. Make the second one, right? One stack. So all we're doing there is we're taking a dimension. I have a closed open for complaints. What are open complaints? What are closed complaints? And I'm simply coloring by them to make the stacked bar chart. All right, we can make a small multiple or bars where we have multiple lines, for example. We're going to use that same, I'm going to use the Superstore data this time. And I'm going to take the ship mode. Let's take ship mode and put them on the rows. Our rows are our y-axis. Y-axis is your rows, so your ship modes are on your rows. I want to do something else on the x-axis. I'll just do quantity. So quantity, x-axis, that's going to be our columns, right? We get a bar chart. But if I take that quantity and move it down to be on the same y-axis, then I get the bars going the other way. I just flip the axis. That's great. Let's see that over time. Have order date. I'll put that here. I'll make it a bar chart, and I'll hit the hierarchy and show it over time. So now we have the quantity over time. Maybe we'll color it by ship mode as well. Put ship mode on color. So there's a small multiples bar chart. Now let's do a bar in bar. There's a couple of different ways that you could do a bar in bar chart. I'm going to use that same actual and target data that I just used in the coffee chain data. So I'm actually going to start in pretty much the same way. I'm going to start with a bar chart. We know how to do that. Double click on sales, double click on our product line, hit the hierarchy and bring the hierarchy down, and maybe rotate the chart. So easy enough. We just repeated the bar chart. To do a bar in bar, I have two ways of doing that. Actually, there's more than that, but I'm going to show you two here today. The first one I'm going to do is using a dual access. So I'm going to take the budget sales, and I'm going to move it up next to sales. And so that's going to ultimately create two charts. I'm going to put them on the same chart with a dual access right here. Now, notice that Tableau changed my mark types on me. Does that frustrate anybody in here? Yeah, that it changes mark types? That's the automatic that's doing that. If I were to set that to bars before I do the dual access, then it'll stick to the bars when I flip to the dual access, just because of the automatic mark types. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do is change the size of one of these. Let's make the size of the, let's take sales. I want to take the size of the sales, and I'll make it down. And you'll see that I have marks here, right? You got one mark that's kind of on top of each other. You can do this with the pill, up here on the pill. Flip your pills around. Hey, one went on top of the other. Easy, fast way to do it. I just flip the order of my pills on my columns, and then one mark went on top of the other mark, and I have a bar and bar. If you were doing a dual access, I skipped this step kind of on purpose here. What you want to do is make sure that you synchronize that access. So always, I'll show the header here, always synchronize your access when you're doing something like that. Do you see the bars move, right? They weren't in the right place. So if you don't synchronize your access and you use a dual access, they're going to end up in different places. Make sure you do that. All right, let's do bar in a slightly different way. This time, I'm going to double-click sales, double-click our line again. I'm going to do the exact same steps, just kind of put this out there and have the exact same chart. Now, instead of putting that target in this view as a dual access, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use measure names and measure values. And so I can set this up with sort of a dual access with a single pill. So let's do that. Let's take, where is my budget sales? Right there. I'm going to drag budget sales over top of sales. See the x-axis at the bottom? Over top of my x-axis at the bottom. Notice a change to measure values on my columns. I added a pill right on my x-axis. That's awesome. So I have that, right? And then from here, what I need to do is my measure values ended up on my rows. I need to remove that measure values. I'm going to move it over to color and color them. I'm also going to add measure, that was measure names. I said measure values, I'm sorry. Measure names, I'm going to move measure names to size. And now I can size the bars differently. And in here, I can change which mark is on top of each other, just like that. I can do that, and I can change the size of it. I need to change the size to make my bars maybe a little bigger. And finally, what do I need to do? My stack marks here, off. Same chart, exactly the same view, basically the same steps. It's just a slightly different way, but I freed up my access now. I don't have to use my dual access for that. All right, the last, nope, I have another one here, histogram. We're going to do a bar chart that is a distribution. When it's a distribution, you're going to use a bin of something, right? So I need to bin something. I'm going to take a look at what I binned here. I binned the number of records on this data set. So let's just go to number of records. Let's create a bin and do create a bin. We can create the bin of whatever size we want. I'll just put it in tens or something for the data set. And now I can use that bin just like I would use anything else. Let's put the bin on our rows. Let's put a product line on our columns. I'm sorry, bin here, yep. And then number of records in each bin. And kind of the same thing. I have a histogram. I'm doing it with categorical data. You could do it with time data, same sort of thing, but with bins instead of bars. Really works well for measures, like continuous data. All right, and let's do a Pareto chart. That's another version of a bar. We're going to take a bar, and we're going to dual access a line on top of it. Really just like we did with the other techniques that we did. So let's take sales. Let's take our product ID. I clicked the wrong field, sorry. There's my first mistake, right? All right, sales and product ID again. We're going to build our bar chart. I'm going to sort it. So there's a bar chart. And I need to do a dual access for this, so I'm going to take sum of sales. I'm going to duplicate it. This time, before I do the dual access, I'm going to create a quick table calculation and do a running total. I'm going to change that to a line, and now put it on a dual access. All right, it changed my bars. Remember, I had it on automatic, so it changed my bars. The last step I need to do is change this secondary y-axis over here. It needs to be a percent, because it's a running total, but it's a running total in a fixed dollar amount. So I'm going to add a calculation here and edit table calculations. I'm going to go and add a secondary calculation. and say that it's going to be a % of total. And when I do that, now my chart is going to show me a Pareto with a running up to 100% with a bar chart. How are we doing here? And bands. The last session just talked about bands, big numbers, big annotated numbers, angry numbers, or Andy will tell you what it really means.
Yes.
This is just simply, thank you, Andy. Watch what happens when you double-click measure names. Double-click measure names, you get a bunch of numbers. It's a text table. That's all of the measures in the field. So there's the start of my numbers. I can pick which ones I want, because I'm using measure names and values again. So I'll just pick those 4 here. And then I can use that same thing, measure names, the different measure names here. I can actually use that on color. That'll change the color of them all. This is really nice, because now I can go in here, I can make them, let's make them big, because they're big, right? So 36. There's our big numbers. And if I want to include the names like discount and profit and quantity, and I want to make those colorful too, I can add those to the text. So now I have a text annotation for my big numbers. I can make the bottom one smaller, and I have some really nice designed bands. And now to you.
Boy, that took a while.
I did.
All right, I'm going to go faster. How about that?
All right.
Okay. So I'm going to start by, you may have seen some of these before, but that's okay. I'm going to repeat them anyway, because I know them. So like Jeff said, we can double click on things, but in this particular case, I want to do a bar chart that has no axis. So I'm going to take the sales and drag it to size, switch my mark type to bar, put subcategory on the rows, sort it, and I have a no axis bar chart. All right, so from that, we can then create a lollipop. Did everybody catch that? Is that pretty cool? Okay. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I lost my train of thought here.
Lollipop
okay,
chart.
so we're doing a lollipop. Okay, so Jeff showed how to build a bar chart, so we'll do that. And like Jeff did, I'm going to just duplicate the sales field. I'm going to change this one, because Jeff showed me this yesterday, to a bar. I'm going to make the second one a circle. And then I'm going to do dual axis by dragging it there instead, because that's my preferred method. I'm going to make the circles bigger, and then make the bars smaller. See, they like it across the way too. And then, like Jeff said, make sure you synchronize, and there you go. You've got lollipops. Now, there's a derivation of a lollipop that I came up with this week called a Q-tip chart. So everybody knows what a Q-tip is, I assume, right? Okay, so a Q-tip, we actually need a circle on the left-hand side as well. So to do that, I'm just going to double-click in the shelf, do the average of 0, and I'm going to now create a shared axis on the one that has my circles. And now I have this measure names, so on measure values, I'm going to move, actually measure names I'm going to just take off, I believe. There we go. All right, and then to make it look like a Q-tip, I'm going to make these white and put a blue border on them. And then I'm going to make the stick like a light blue, because they seem to have, see, there's your Q-tip chart. Okay, so people like this one that I did for Makeover Monday a while ago, so I'm going to do something similar. This time I want to have like nice rounded ends on the ends of my bar chart, so I'm going to again do the average of 0. Oops, my computer's deciding to be slow. And I'm going to make them a shared axis, so we get something like that. Now I'm going to change my mark type to a line, and I'm going to move measure names to the path. So the path just plays a game of connect the dots. I'm going to make these bigger, and now I've got nice rounded bar charts. But if you don't want the rounded on the left-hand side because it goes lower than 0, just double-click on your axis, fix the bottom to be 0, and then set the right-hand side to be automatic in case you filter the data, and now you just have a circle at the one end. Okay, so now this is another one that we came up with at the data school a couple weeks ago called a thermometer chart. So you know how like when people do fundraising and they have like a thermometer and they count up? So I thought maybe we'd make that a chart. It's another really stupid chart you shouldn't really create, but it's fun. So in this case, I'm looking at the bar and bar like Jeff showed. And my favorite thing, again, I've done this 3 times in a row now, is to make an average of 0. And I'm going to make this dual axis. And, oh, I messed that up. Okay, so let's take measure names off. I messed up something here. So this is when I use my favorite feature, which is undo. And I go back here. I'm going to make this a bar. make this one a circle. And now if I dual axis them and I synchronize, I still put measure names on there, which is super annoying. So I'm going to remove it from there and remove it from there. And what happened here? Okay, let me get rid of both of these, make it a circle. And now if I make it bigger and color it the same color as my inside bar, it kind of looks like a thermometer. Doesn't it look like a thermometer if you turn it? Do they look like thermometers or like those things? Yeah. It's really, really stupid. I didn't say you were going to learn anything. Okay, so another derivation of this is like a barbell chart. So in this case, I want to compare 2017 to 2018. So I'm going to do something different and use subcategory. And they didn't get that. Okay.
They didn't get
it. They didn't get that at all. So I'm going to put 2018. I've created a calculation for 2018 sales. Let me just show you that real quick. And if I look at it this way, it says if year of order date is equal to 2018, then give me sales. And I just duplicated that for 2017. So I'm going to do the shared axis again and move measure names to the detail shelf and make these circles. Okay, so I've got that. And now I need to duplicate that. And on this one, I want to play the game of connect the dots. So I'm going to make it a line. Looks hideous. So I'm going to move measure names to the path shelf and then dual axis. You see I did it different that time. Move these marks to the, or synchronize. Come on, move these to the back. And then on the circle shelf, I'm going to put measure names onto color. And there we go. So now I have a barbell chart. Now in this case, I would probably sort it by 2018 sales. Oh, this is the new sort window field. I'm using the what is this, 20?
Beta?
Yeah, 2018.3 beta. Okay, so now you can see they're all sorted by the orange, and I can see like machines right here has a year-over-year decline. So that's a barbell chart. So Jeff showed stacked bar charts, but I'm going to show it again. So I've got, let me put it in my columns this time, and I'm going to put sales in the rows to make it bars. Oh, and I cheated there. Let me remove that. Okay, so I'm going to put region on the color shelf. And what I really want, or let me do something smaller. What's a smaller, maybe segment? That only has 3, I think. Okay, there we go. So if I turn on my labels by hitting the little text button up here, that turns all your labels on, you'll see they're all in the middle. What I really want is to show the grand total. So to do that, I'm going to go to the analytics pane, put on a reference line on the cell level, and with any luck, they break. Why didn't that work? Okay, cell level. Okay, and now I have a small little line here, so I'm going to edit that. And I'm going to tell it to use the value for the label. I'm going to hide my lines, turn off my show recalculate, which I wish I could do by default. And there we go. So we now have a, let me set it to entire view. They're cut off for some reason, but you can see you now have the total at the top of the bar chart. All right, and I hate packed bubbles. So let's learn how to make packed bubbles. Okay, so this is a data set I made up about car purchases. And let's say we want to look at the price. So I'm going to put price on size. And then I want to look at it for the make of every car. I think it's make I want to use. Okay, so let's put that on detail. And it defaults to a tree map. But to make it a packed bubbles, I'll just go and switch the mark type to circle. So once you have an ugly chart like that, you can color them, which is fun. So let's color them by the color of the vehicle. So there we go. So now we've got circles like that, even more hideous. And then if you really want, you can turn that into a bullseye by putting order date onto detail. And now you've got a nice little bullseye. And if you really want to make your stakeholders upset, you can make it a small multiple bullseye. So let's put purchase date onto the columns. And let's stick it here on the rows. And you get something like that. Okay. Don't build anything like that, please. Okay. Jeff had another name for that one earlier, but I'm not going to repeat that one. Okay, I should.
This is being recorded. Yeah.
Okay, oh, that's true, yeah. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to do a diverging area chart. So this is, think of this as like a population pyramid, or some people call it a bikini chart, because it kind of looks like a bikini. So in this case, I've created a calculation to pull out the, if the gender is female, then return the population, and I duplicated that and switched it to male. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put year onto my row shelf, and put female on my columns. And notice how my years are backwards, so I'm going to edit my axis and switch that around so the most recent year is at the top, reversed. Okay, so we got that, and I'm going to switch it to an area chart. All right, so we got half of it. So we want to do the other half, so I'm going to take male, and I'm going to do my little shared axis thing here. You know it's shared axis because you see the two green rulers. All right, but now they're stacked on top of each other, which I don't like. So there's two ways I can fix that. One way is I could just double click in this cell here and make it a minus, and now we can, it automatically switches it. The other way is to actually just change your calculation. So I could come in here and just put a minus sign at the front, in front of my if, and I get it that way. The problem now is I've got this ugly formatting at the bottom with the negative signs. You see all the negative signs in there? I don't like that. So what I like to do is set my default number format. I'll go in here to, oh, I already did it. Okay, sweet. What I would have done is I'll go in here to number custom, set it to 0, and then go down to my custom option, and you'll notice Tableau automatically sets the negatives with a negative sign in front. So I'm just going to reformat that and hit OK. Now this one's still messed up because it's using measure values. If I hover over, you'll see male is positive. So I can format this one the same way and just go into, what is it, numbers, custom, and I'll just do pound, comma, pound, 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 comma, semicolon. And there we go. So now I've got all positive values. So should, your turn next, right?
It is?
Okay, yeah, I think so. So now you have to go faster. Okay.
We're doing good.
That's it so far.
All right, we're going to make a table. All the clients ask for tables, right? Well, we already made really a table. We used the measure values, and I'm going to use the famous subcategory field again here. So on the Superstore data, I'm just going to take our subcategories and put them on the rows, and I'm going to just take our measure names in our data. We're going to put that on our columns. You'll see there it's starting to fill in, and we take our measure values, we put it to our text. We got a table, easy enough. What if we want to color that table? Well, I can color it. Let me take some of these off of here. I'll take max and number of records off, and let's just take those two off. So I have 4 columns. Let's color it. Well, I could color it by the measure names. So there, each one is colored. That's fine. I could color it by the measure values to show low and high values, and that's okay. Really hard to see these numbers, right? So in the mark type, I could change this to a square. Now I have a highlight table. The problem here is that they're all on the same scale. So thankfully, we can actually change that now on our measure values. Tableau, I don't remember what version they gave this, use separate legends. So just right click on that, and we can use separate legends. And that way, I can change the color of each one of these. And thank you. And easy enough to change these so we can have different colors for the different ones. I won't change too many of them, but just to give you a different look at how that might look. All right, let's keep going. Dot plot. We're going to start here, and we're going to get into some plots maybe you haven't heard of, but maybe they're useful to you, so I think this will be a good section for you. I'm going to start with life expectancy of a female, and this is in the regions of the world, this continent, so I'm going to double-click on continent. That's the life expectancy of the females. Now I'm going to make that a dot plot, so I'm going to go to my marks card, make it a circle. I'm going to add country to the details. That's going to burst the dots by all of the countries. So now I have the dots for each country. I'm also going to add region to color just so you can kind of see that. I'll kick it in entire view. And that's great. Some dots are on top of each other. If I go here, I can fix my access maybe to 40 and help the view a little bit. Maybe it'll spread some of the dots out. Another trick I like is to change the opacity and put a little border on it. That can help, but we still have lots of dots on top of each other. So the next one we can do is a jitter, add jitter to it. Right inline formula on the columns, I'm going to double click. So now I can type a formula. I'm going to type the word random, open and close parentheses, and now I have a jitter plot. That easy, we have jitter. Okay? Then, what if I want to add some more information? I could do the same trick I did with some of the other plots with the average line. Maybe I want to put an average line in for the pane to see where the average is. I could maybe do a box plot. There's another chart type. This one lives in our analytics tab. We can bring the box plot over, and we can show a box plot. And I can format that. Let's make it a color, give it a little opacity, and we now have a box plot with jitter. That's pretty cool, right? All right. let's keep going. Let's take the box plot off, drag it off, take the average line, drag it off. Instead of using random, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do an index. All right, so I'm going to go up here and modify that formula. I'm just going to say index, I-N-D-E-X, open paren, close paren. All right, that's going to put our circles back together. The next thing I'm going to do is take life expectancy and I'm going to bin it in some bin. Doesn't matter what size, but I'm going to bin it and create some different chart types with that. So let's start with a bin of 0, actually 1, I mean. So there's life expectancy bins of 1, this new field that I have binned. I'm going to take that life expectancy and I'm going to put it on my details. That didn't work. On my details, please. And then I'm going to take this index calculation and tell it, you know what, I want to compute this index using country, not region, country life expectancy. And I want to take life expectancy and move it up so it's at the top. I'm going to have it restart every bin, so every one, it's going to restart. And I'm going to custom sort it so that it'll sort by the life expectancy of the female, which is an average. And now I have sort of a unit histogram of all that in. What's really cool about that, now that it's a bin, I can go in and adjust that bin, and with one adjustment, I can create a chart called a wheat plot. This is something Stephen Few wrote about because he's not keen on jitter. So instead of jitter, he would prefer to see the data more like that. And now it's in bins of 5, where the values are going up, no dot is on top of each other, and every 5, it restarts. And the beauty of that is I can go into the bin. This is a nice little thing when I edit it. Of course, I can say, let's use a new parameter. I can call it bin size, right? Call it bin size. I'll make the current value minimum 1, please, and maximum of 10, and step size of 1. Click OK. And now I'll make that a step slider. And now my wheat plot is, I can put it in whatever size bins I want, or back to a histogram. So cool. There you go. This is not going to build that, but the same technique I use for a dashboard in the big book of dashboards. It's the speaker ratings, and you can size those dots by the number of people in a session. So the big dots are more people, just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like.
But only 5 ratings.
Yeah, only 5 ratings, please. Yeah. All right. Apparently I pre-built this map, so we will not do that. All right, this is one of my favorites in Tableau, building maps. This is I guess my fast portion of the evening here. So any geographic field, I have 4 geographic fields here: country, state, city, postal code. They all generate a longitude and latitude. When you double click them, what do you get? You get a map. It's that easy, right? Longitude goes to columns, latitude goes to rows, state goes to details. And then if I want to color a map, I put profit on color, I get a shaded map. If I want to put sales on size, it now sizes the dots, and I have symbols on a map. So I can get both of those. And what if I want to do both? Want to do a shaded and a dot? Well, then I duplicate the pill. In this case, longitude. I'm going to duplicate it next to each other. On the second marks card, I'm going to take off my sales. I'm going to put the profit down here on color. And I'll dual access this. We don't have to synchronize a map. We do have to make sure our marks are on top. Otherwise, we won't see the dots that are underneath it. And now I have a dual access where I have sales as the size of the circles, and I have profit as the color in the state. So you can do a dual access map there. All right. What if we want to tile it? All right. Well, thanks to a whole bunch of people in the Tableau community, starting with Brittany Fong and Matt and a whole bunch of people. We have hex maps, polygon maps, and so let's build a hex map and a polygon. In Matt's template, columns, well, guess where columns and rows go? Rows go to rows, columns go to columns. That's easy. This is his data, and he tells you how to do it. You put state on your details, and it bursts your state, and now you're starting to see the outline of the United States. It happens to be upside down, but I'll flip it, and you can kind of see the shape of the United States. Now this is nice because I can use whatever shape I want. I can size them the way that I want. I can make circles. So in this case, I'll use filled circles. And then I'll go back to my Superstore data and put profit on this. Profit will now link via state, and there's profit by state. You'll kind of realize that you don't know what state is what, so they gave you abbreviation. You put abbreviation on label, and then you just align your label here in the center, make sure that you have your mark on, and you have basically a tile map. That's with circles. If you want to do other shapes, you can download and do custom shapes. You can do shapes, any kind of shape. So I have preloaded some hex shapes in here, and we can create a hex map. So let's go down to some hex shapes, and I'll use this one. And you'll see we have a hex map. We'll make the size a little bigger so they, not that big. There we go. And now we have a hex map. We do the same thing with a polygon. The polygons are nice because you don't have to mess with the size shelf. Same data set. This, I think Roddy did this one. So there's an X and Y. Again, guess where they go? If you double click Y, it goes to your rows. Double click X, it goes to your columns. That's the X and Y axis. You put your state on your details. You see what I'm doing? It's exactly the same steps as the other one. And when I go to the Superstore, again, I add profit, put profit on color, and I get the same sort of thing. And I can do this in the same way with polygons. So same data set, really. There's the polygon version of that. This is exactly what I did in the big book of dashboards for my complaints database. That is a hex map. That uses the shape technique. Here's another variation with a dual access and some variations that people have done online. I use that variation actually right there to build my zombie map. Will your state survive the zombie apocalypse? All right, with that, I'm over to you.
My turn? Okay. So Jeff introduced me to a new word today called Chernov.
The Chernov faces.
Is that a person?
It is a person
It is
who
a
made a
person,
chart
okay.
type. Yeah.
So I decided, he showed you guys how to build a hex map, but I'm going to do it as well. So let's put rows and columns like Jeff did. Now, I put a negative in front of mine so I don't have to reverse the axis every time.
Nice.
And I've got this, I've created a calculation to determine whether or not they're profitable. And we get colors like that. Actually, I don't want it on color. I want it on shape. And we get squares and circles. Well, I have loaded up a palette of faces. So emoticons. So my false ones, they're sad. The true ones are happy. And now we have nice little smiley faces in there. But you know, I like emojis, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to duplicate my rows field. I'm going to make this one circles instead of shapes, and I'm going to color them yellow. And now when I dual axis it, I get nice little, I have to synchronize and then move this one to the back, and we get emojis like that. So, woo. Okay. Okay, but really, who needs a Chernov when you've got cats? So I'm going to take my new profitability and put that onto shape. I'm going to double click on my shape shelf, and if you're really cool, you have a nice little cats emoji. I'm going to do the falses are sad cats, the trues are the eyeball cats. Hit apply, and now we have a cat map.
That's for Ann Jackson.
Yeah, she's not here though, is she?
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thought she would like that. Okay, so a similar way to use shapes is to build something like a KPI chart. So I'm going to take subcategory and put that on the rows and put region in the columns. And all I really care about is my year-over-year change. So I've created a calculated field that just looks at, you know, is my 2018 sales, or 2018 minus 2017, is that bigger than 0? So it's just going to result in a true or false. So I'm going to change my mark type to a shape. I'm going to put that onto the shape shelf and then go back into my shapes palette, and there is a KPI one somewhere. They're in alphabetical order, and I'm going to make the falses red X's, the other ones checks, and now you have a nice little KPI chart. Okay, so Scatterplots. So like Jeff said, you can just double click on things. So I'm going to look at life expectancy versus children per woman. So you double click and you get a Scatterplot. But I want to look at it for every single country, so I'm going to put country name on the detail shelf, and we get a nice little Scatterplot. But you can then also color that Scatterplot, so I want to color that by region. And now they're overlapping a bit, so I'm going to click on the color shelf and maybe reduce the opacity a bit so they're not quite so overlapping. But then after you color them, you could also size them. So I'm going to size them by population. And now I get a mix of things like that. So let me click on the size shelf and just make them a bit bigger, something like that. That's good. And then after you size them, you can then animate them. So I'm going to take my year that I have on filter right now. I'm going to move it to pages. And this is like the famous Hans Rosling. He's much better at this than me, but we're going to try it anyway. So I'm going to play it, and you're going to see the dots kind of move up and to the left as you go through, which I think looks pretty cool. Should we let it finish? I think it looks pretty neat. Has anybody ever seen his video? You should look it up if you haven't. Okay. Okay, so now the last thing I like to do once I create something like that is I'm going to right-click in the space here and annotate that area. And I'm going to just stick in there my page name. And if I make this nice and big, I think it's page name. It should be. Let's make it like, I don't know, let's make it a bit bigger, like 36 point. And let's make it maybe a light gray so it's in the background. Good enough, bold. Okay, something like that. So I now have this little box up here, and I'm going to format that and get rid of the background. There we go. And get rid of the line. Okay, so now when I play it, you'll see that year annotates as you go through. So you'll see it keep going through. So that's a good way if you ever need to use pages. Who wants pages on Tableau Public and Tableau Server? Does anybody want that? Yeah. Come on, Tableau, fix it. All right. And then the last scatterplot I'm going to show you is what's called a connected scatterplot. So what this means is I have life expectancy in this case versus healthcare expenditure. And I'm going to do that by country name. And again, we have the same kind of view. But what I want to do is I want to show how these move across the year. So if I just put year on the detail shelf, I just get a bunch of dots like that. So I've got a scatter plot because I have a measure on the x-axis and a measure on the y-axis. But I'm going to change my mark type to a line, move the year field to the path shelf, and then I'm going to just set this to be, let's see, fixed. And let's do, wait, what am I trying to do here? Yeah, or no, I just want to uncheck the include zero. There we go. Something like that. And now you have what's called a connected scatterplot. All right, and then, okay, so this one's pretty cool. I showed Jeff this one earlier, and he really liked it. So this is baseball data, Clayton Kershaw, since he's pitching in the World Series. I thought we'd look at some of his data and show off the new density mark type in Tableau. So we've got two fields. So we've got this is every single pitch that he's thrown since his career started, and the location of each of those. So we've got something like that. Now, I want to show every single point, so I'm going to go up to the analysis menu and disaggregate the data. And what that does is it plots every single point in the data set in the view. So now we can see every pitch that he's ever thrown. And if I change it to a density mark type, and then I'm going to change the palette to, I used, which one was it? Sunrise, sunset, there it is, right there. And now we get a pretty cool little heat map of where all of his pitches are thrown. You could put a box in the background for a strike zone if you wanted to, or something like that. And it looks particularly cool when you put the pitch type in the columns, because you can see the big circle here because they're all balls. So really interesting. Thank goodness there's none in the middle, or the umpires would be terrible. Okay, so then if you want to just do a regular density map, you could do something like, let's look at, I'm just going to double click on latitude, double click on longitude, and I get a map of New York. And what I want to do in this case is I'm going to, again, okay, so I already disaggregated the data. I'm going to turn this into a density map as well. And now we're looking at rats in New York, rat sightings in New York. So I can go to the Bronx or go to Brooklyn. What's really cool is Manhattan, because apparently there's no rats in Central Park. I doubt that. But if anybody's been to New York, you know that's not true. Okay, so the next one, so Jeff showed you guys how to build a histogram. And in this particular data set, I'm using that same Hans Rosling data set. I'm just binning the ages, or the life expectancy in number of years. But I want to animate this. So I'm going to take my year field and put that on the pages shelf. And notice how the ages go from 15 to 80. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the time period. And this is the number of countries that fall into each of those bins. This is the average life expectancy. So if I play this, what's really cool about this is you kind of see it go left to right, and people are getting older as time passes, which I think looks really cool. This would be super cool if it was really fast. So I should record it and then play it on double speed, something like that. Okay, and the last one, this is one of my favorites. Who would like to be able to create dashed lines in Tableau? Does everybody know what dashed lines are? Yeah, okay. It's actually not hard at all. So I'm going to take purchase date to the columns, And let's say we look at it for every month. And I'm going to just double click on price and I get my line chart, but I want that to be dashed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this month field onto the pages shelf. And I need to change my mark type to a circle. And, oh, I cheated. I already built it. So let me go back in here and let's just do the marks. Okay, so it's just circles. This is how it should have looked by default. And what I'm going to do now, let me switch this all the way back to the beginning. It shows me just one dot. So this would be kind of the default view. But when I play this, you'll see the dot just moves, which isn't particularly interesting unless you like watching dots move on a screen. So I'm going to move that back to the beginning. And on my show history, I'm going to turn on the trails and set my trail to be a dashed line. And now I can just drag this to the very end, and I have nice little dashed lines. Okay, now that's not scalable, because if you get another month of data, it breaks. But if it's a one-time thing, it looks kind of cool. Okay, so back to Jeff.
All right, a couple quick ones here. You can import shape files into Tableau, and when you do, the data is actually not big at all. If you view the data here, it's really just a few rows, and it has all the data behind the scenes. If you do that, double-click on geometry, and you get custom shape files that you can bring in. This is just the boroughs of New York, so I'll put the boroughs over there, and we now have the boroughs of New York. So that's really cool, just to do that. What about pass? Airplane pass. That one's always fun. So in this case, I want to build a map going from city to city. So I'm going to double click. Nice thing about longitude and latitude, they'll end up in the right place generally when you double click. Latitude always goes on your rows, longitude always goes on your columns, and you have a map. If I multi-select path ID and path order, that's the shape of your data, has to be in that, and I put them on details, I'll get the dots that go all over the country. And because each pair has going from one point to another, then I can put that online. And I lost my path order here, put that back on the details, and I have my path. So that's just point A to point B. You have to make them align and connect the dots for your path order and your path ID, and you get your paths. If you want to put dots on those, just the dual access trick that we've been showing. I'm going to duplicate longitude again, have a second map. On the second map, I'll make those dots, and you don't have to synchronize the access for a map, so we'll just put it in dual access, and now I have dots, and I can color those and whatnot. All right, let's do something else fun. I haven't seen anybody do this one in Tableau, and it frustrates me sometimes when dots are on top of each other. Andy just built this beautiful Scatterplot. It's basically the same Scatterplot, and I just want to see this view over here. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this chart that I'm calling a zoom. So I'm going to duplicate the chart and have another one that looks just like it, zoom chart 2, if you will, okay? And the trick on this is that you're going to go to your access and make sure that your access is automatic and does not include 0, okay? And you got to do that with both of your X and Y axis. Automatic and does not include 0. All right, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to bin your two things that you're using, your two measures. I'm using infant mortality and life expectancy. So I'm going to take life expectancy of a female, I'm going to create a bin, and I'm going to put the bin for the life expectancy of a female at 10. I'm going to take the infant mortality rate, I'm going to bin that, so create a bin. Let's create a bin for that one. I'm going to call that one 0.01, as in 1%, okay? And click OK. I'm going to take both of those bins, I'm going to add it to the detail of my original chart, and then I'm going to go into my tooltip, and I'm going to add a tooltip for this new zoom that I have. And so the zoom, all the way at the bottom of my list, yeah, I know I have so many sheets in here, so sorry about that. Let's go all the way to the bottom. Zoom 2, which is the one I just created. I'm going to change the max width and height to 900. And here is the fun part. Instead of filtering on all of the fields in this quote, what I'm going to do is insert the one bin. Where's my bin? Infant mortality. I'm going to put a comma. I'm going to insert the other bin for life expectancy. That's going to have both bins in my filter. And now, when I highlight over this, it's going to filter into where the dots are. So I have a zoom in on the dots. And you can create that in any spacing you want. You can do that in your different areas. I did 10 for life expectancy and 1% for infant mortality, but it creates a little zoom chart for you. Oh, thank you. All right, let's build a tadpole chart. To do this, you need to have one calculated field ahead of time. You saw Andy do it before. He said if it equals the max date. I used max date as sort of a function and just figured out the maximum date of the data. So 2 dates in here. It's going to be, say, 2016 and 2017. I'm going to start with a bar chart here. Well, let me show you the structure of the data just so you understand how it goes. There's the max date only shows up when it's 2018. So that's really all we're doing here. So let's go back. Let's go to category and build our category. I'll do category on our rows and click that out for us for the subcategory. And sales, I'll do on columns. Now, I want to make this a line, but I want the line to be, just like Andy did, I want the line to be based on that date that I'm using. So I'm going to put order date on my path to have my line. And then I need to create a dot for that max. So I'm going to bring my sales max date up. I'm going to put it on here. There's my dot for my max date. Again, I'll make this a dual axis, and I'll synchronize the axis. It changed my mark type again there. So my dot and my line.
Make it bigger.
That did not work. It's white. Oh, thank you. You all are smart out there. All right.
It was a test to see if you were paying attention.
It was a test to see if you were paying attention. There you go. You know why I was white? I'll show you why I was white. Okay, here we go. What if I want to make that an open circle? I can go in here and I can use a shape, and the problem is my line kind of ends up in the middle of that circle. And so the reason I made that white is because I made 2 of those pills. I had sales date max and sales date max copy. So what I'm going to do is instead of using those 2 pills, I'm going to use my measure values. I'm going to put my measure values up there and select those 2 pills. I'm going to take my 2, actually I can get rid of all of these and just have those 2 on there. And the reason that was white is because I made one of them white. I'm going to go in here and do that again. I just used the wrong one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now what I can do when I make this a dual axis is I can have one on top of the other. We'll make the size a little bigger. Let's finish this up here. Make that a circle. Make the measure names, which is what's going to tell us which one is which. I'm going to put that on the size. I'm also going to put measure names on color, which it already is. And I can have one circle on top of the other. One is white. In this case, let's do that and that. And you can kind of see that I have an open circle without any dot, any line in the middle of it.
Sneaky.
Sneaky, sneaky, right? All right. Let's flip over to you.
Okay. We've got 6 minutes left. I think we've probably already hit 50, but we're going to keep going anyway. All right, so slope graphs. So in this case, I'm going to look at 2 fields here. So I'm going to look at, I want to compare obesity rates to higher education rates. So I'm going to double click on one of my measures and it puts it in the rows. I'm going to drag this one and put it on top of the axis so I get 2 like that. I'm going to put the state onto detail. I'm going to make it a line. And now I get a nice little, let me see, there we go. There we go. So now I get a nice little slope graph. You can see I already put the dots on the end, but normally it would show up like that. You hit this option down here on the marks, and you get circles on the end. And then I created a calculation to decide if they were increased or decreased. So I'm just looking at whether one measure is higher than the other. I put that onto the color shelf, and I get a nice little slope graph. But the problem is all of my gray ones are in front of the red ones. If I want to switch them around, I just drag them in the color shelf. And now I've got the red ones not in the front. Okay, pretend they're in the front because they should be. All right, anyway, that was a fail. Okay, so another way to create a slope graph really quickly is if I go to, let's say, Superstore, and I want to put, where is it here, order date onto the columns, and let's put maybe sales onto the rows, and I want to look at maybe every subcategory. So I'm going to put that on detail. and we get something like that. It's not really a slope graph, but what I can do is I can pick the two years in the middle and exclude those, and that's another way that you can get a slope graph if you have a time dimension. That was a bonus. Okay, so spark lines, they're basically small line charts. So what I like to do for these is let's go ahead and look at the quarterly sales for my fictitious car dealership. And I'm going to go ahead and put price up here. And normally it shows up as entire view, something like that. But what I want to do is I want to look at it for each color. So I'm going to put colors onto the rows. And because colors are colors, I should probably put colors on colors. So let's do something like that. But to make it a spark line, what you'll do is you'll grab the edge. So let me switch this back to standard. And what I really did was if I go back out, it was out here. And I just grab the edge of it, and I drag it in, make it a nice little spark line, and then double click on your axis, make them independent, uncheck the include 0, and then hide the axis, or uncheck the show header, sorry. And what I would probably do is make these a bit wider, make these a bit shorter, and you have nice little spark lines. Okay, so if we wanted to, I'm going back to the Clayton Kershaw data here. So what I wanted to look at here was for every pitch he's thrown across every game, I want to see kind of the cumulative pitches. So what I've done first is I've created a calculated field called first pitch. So what I've done is for this basically is saying for each game, give me the first pitch ID because they repeat. And then I had to create a kind of a dummy field called pitch ID. And because it's a combination of the batter in the inning plus the pitch number, I just multiplied it by 1,000 just for sorting purposes. And then I have another field, where's it called? Called cumulative pitches. And what I'm doing there is I'm just subtracting my pitch ID from my first pitch level of detail calculation and dividing by 1,000 to get rid of that number. So I can put that onto the columns. And I can put, let's see, maybe I'm going to put each individual game onto the detail. And we could do that maybe. And I need to put number of records onto the rows. And that is not what I wanted. So what did I do wrong? OK, so we're going to hit clear sheet and move on to the next one, because I forget what I did there. Okay, so Jeff showed you how to do kind of a dual axis map. I like sometimes using a filled map as a background layer because I don't like having all the map crap in the background. So I'm going to just double click on state again, and my computer is set up for the UK. So I'm going to double click on country first and then state, and I'm going to make it a filled map. Let's go ahead down here to map, and maybe I make these maybe black or something like that. All right, and perhaps I put maybe some light borders on them, something like that. Okay, so now I can go up to the map option, or map layers, and turn everything off. So I can just, I can either do that, or I could just wash the whole thing out. And now I have a nice little background layer, and I can do like Jeff did. So I can duplicate, and on this one, maybe I want to look at, sales on the size. So I can change this to just an automatic map, and we get the dots. Maybe I should change the color on these, though. Let's make them white. And then now when I dual axis this, you can see nothing because it didn't dual. Oh, boy.
Ooh.
Should we count how long this takes?
At least it did that at the end.
This should be about 3 seconds. All right. This is like watching paint dry.
This is what happens when you use beta in production over here.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit cancel and hope. Okay, so you guys understand what that would have done? Okay, good. Okay, so I'm gonna run through a couple more real quick. Should I keep going?
We have like 45 seconds.
Oh, plenty of time. Okay, so to create an area chart, we're just gonna maybe look at quarterly sales. And then change it to an area, so that's really easy. Sometimes I like to have a line at the top as well, so I'll duplicate my sales. Oh, it helps if I hold the right key. And I'll make the second one a line, and then dual axis. Where is it here? And then synchronize, make sure you synchronize always. And then on this one, oops, God, I hate it when it does that. I'm going to go onto the color shelf and make it really dark, so now you've got a nice little something like that. Let's see, what else could we do? We've got 6 seconds, 5, 4. Okay, I guess we'll stop there. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Good job. All right, thanks everybody for coming. Don't forget to fill out the survey. It's on there somewhere, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, thank you very much.